Wake up, wake up.
America is already great.
Wake up, wake up. Wake up, wake up.
When they go low, we go high.
That's our motto. We want freedom by any means necessary.
Wake up. The front page with Dominique DiPrima is on. News, knowledge, and your voice. The views and opinions expressed on the front page are not necessarily those of Taxi Productions or KJLH. Rise, shine, and stay woke. It's the front page with Dominique DiPrima on Radio Free 102.3 KJLH.
If you dare to struggle, you dare to win. If you dare not to struggle, then you don't deserve to win.
Wake up, wake up.
Good morning and God bless. Welcome to the front page, Saturday Town Hall Edition. I'm Dominique DiPrima. Our topic today, Black mayors' leadership in times of crisis. And of course, we started out these town hall meetings on Saturdays as an emergency response to the COVID crisis. And so pleased to have the sponsorship of Council President Emeritus Herb Wesson, the City of Los Angeles, the Independent Professionals Association at indiework.org, and Community Build, which is a community-based organization doing excellent work here in Los Angeles. Since that time, when we launched this 8 weeks ago, have had a considerable other crisis situation erupt, a crisis that's been here all along, but now has exploded into our national consciousness, which is about police abuse and racism. How do we become anti-racist as a nation? How do we turn the page on our prior history as a nation? And certainly the mayors of all of these cities, black mayors that we will hear from today, and we have an incredible lineup, are managing multiple crises, and we we salute them for doing that. At the same time, you'll have the opportunity to ask questions if you have questions on your mind. Joining us first, she made history in 2018 as the first woman mayor of the city of Los Angeles in the 3-century history of that city. Believe it or not, she New Orleans, yes, absolutely. The first mayor of New Orleans. She grew up in L.A., though, and she is... She started out in City Hall as a city council member representing District B, but here we are with a woman, and a black woman at that, leading the city of New Orleans in this time of layered crises. Mayor Toya Cantrell, thank you so much for joining us today.
No, thank you. Good morning. Please excuse my voice. There's been a lot of protesting going on, and a lot of support of that.
You are very busy and using that voice a lot right now. For a lot of cities, the COVID crisis was shaking them to their core, and now this police, rebellion, really nationally, for lack of a better word, is something unfamiliar to them. The city of New Orleans has been through a lot of different kinds of major crises. So maybe you're more prepared, do you think?
Well, no doubt about it, from my perspective, and it just depends on what those examples that you're thinking of, if they're aligned with mine. But since, which are multiple tracks, so whether it's disasters, whether it's collapse of development, whether, it is, of course, this pandemic, whether it is flooding, happening on the street, whether it is, of course, civil unrest, that we're experiencing throughout our country. So, and also just the experience of managing crowds of thousands upon thousands of people at any given time. This city and our police department and our public safety team, yes, have a lot of experience managing, large-scale events that bring people together.
Certainly, and everyone thinks of Katrina, but as you've mentioned, there are other multiple layers. But one of the things we look at in a major disaster, as Black people, we always worry we will end up extinct in that city or area. Gentrification will set in. We will end up being pushed out. And so I think, with the COVID-19 hitting much harder among African Americans, and then this particular rebellion being very much focused around us, how do you prepare to, have that city safety net? How do you, prepare to be there for the African American community as a leader of the full entire city?
Sure. Well, it's something that you just do, and you don't wait into a crisis to do it. You have to show up and build that trust and be a part of the community and meet people where they are pre-disaster or pre-tragedy to be able to show up for people in the midst of tragedy or a disaster. And so in order to deal with racial disparities or health disparities or all social economic disparities, there has to be a focus on those issues prior to. And so with my experience in terms of, you mentioned Hurricane Katrina, well, I was a community organizer prior to Hurricane Katrina, and when it hit, I led my community through that tragedy and through disaster and through recovery. And that wasn't being elected to anything. So from my perspective, it's being on the ground prior to that when you come and when you show up, you're not just showing up because you've been there. And that's something that I carried through my work that led me to the council, that led me to being mayor. But at the end of the day, it was the people who got me there, which is a demonstration of the level of trust and focus and intentionality that our people, that our communities deserve every single day, which will help us respond to the stressors that tragedies and disasters bring. And also, I think it's evident in our ability to respond. And you can see it even in with the protesting and the civil unrest that we have been experiencing. The New Orleans Police Department and how the city has responded has been really trying to make a way, for our residents, for our people, to have a safe space and an environment to use and elevate their voices, because that's what we want to do prior to, and we demonstrate that by making a way, for our folks. And that cannot stop even after we've moved past protests. It has to result in real action. So the community holds you accountable. And this community, this city, this culture of the people here just has a way of holding their political officials accountable in ways that you don't see in other cities. It's so upfront and personal.
Absolutely. Well, what was obviously we all were horrified. What was your reaction when you saw what happened with George Floyd, when you saw that tape? We're already in the middle of a crisis of COVID. We already know about, these disparities in, the economics that are also hitting us during this coronavirus crisis. What was your reaction, and what was your first determination about how to lead?
I was horrified. I was very upset, angry about it. I mean, you'd be like, unbelievable. But unfortunately, it wasn't unbelievable, because this has been something that the Black community has been experiencing for generations. And it wasn't, for me, it's very difficult to isolate an experience like we saw with Floyd. Especially as being an African American. It all is woven together. The experiences are all one big experience that we continue to live and to see. And it's unacceptable. So it's sick and tired of being sick and tired. I think that's how, not only how I felt, but also this is a time to take action. And the responses across the country, for me, have been very heartfelt. I have been moved by them. I think that it is our time. It is the true revolution of our time. And I think the protesters are showing us that they are not going to be sleeping through this revolution. And they need support. And, of course, as a person in my position as mayor, I have a responsibility to not only support and join in, but to move this protest towards real action. So, hey, tired of why all the black folks, why do black people have to die? Why they cannot just be arrested? The black men, you have where we've seen Boston Marathon bombers, for example, they get to be arrested. Mass shooters, they get to be arrested. But for a black man not doing anything wrong, can't even be arrested. They can't even breathe. They have to die. They can't live, nor can they apologize. So, it's time for us to deal with racism head on in this country. And black folks have been standing up against it for so long that we need our white brothers and sisters to not only stand up, but to address systemic racism that exists within all of our institutions.
No doubt. And it's been amazing. And I've been really proud to watch our African-American mayors stepping up and, handling these situations, both the COVID crisis and, this rebellion. And I do agree with you. I feel like, we continue to move forward. These incidents, these rebellions do make a change, but it must be a balancing act being a mayor. Now, we had unemployment numbers come out for the nation on yesterday showing that, there was a net gain of 2.5 million jobs, which was unexpected, right, in this new report. However, the report shows that while unemployment is down among white Americans, it is actually up among African Americans. And I think about, families hit by COVID. I think about the impact of, the protests and such. What happens, in 60 days, in 90 days, when this unemployment crisis becomes a really entrenched and critical situation?
Yeah, what happens is that the disparity gap will widen, and also the impact that will be disproportionately on communities of color. The city of New Orleans is 60% African American. I have 71,000 residents on unemployment insurance. In July, the federal allocation will go away, which reduces their amount that they were getting from $800 a week. That will go down to $200 a week because the state threshold, the maximum that it gives, is $245 a week, which is one of the lowest in the United States of America. So for me, I'm looking at food security as well. For the first time getting the federal government through FEMA to approve a mass feeding program for a city that's not just isolating the most vulnerable, like in terms of homelessness or mentally ill, but that is very comprehensive. That includes families with children, seniors, those living with disabilities, of course, are homeless, but it is so comprehensive. And the city of New Orleans has gotten FEMA to approve 1.8 meals per month at a total of $18 million in regards to a project worksheet. That's unprecedented, but it's forcing us in these times to be creative and to come up with solutions that we have never seen before. And this is one that the city has pushed for and that the city has gotten approved by FEMA. It's a big deal. So while this is about food, we know that it is a key component to a quality of life for our people who were suffering from food that's not having access to food pre-COVID, so we have to focus on these issues every single day that also becomes a real focal point in the midst of a disaster. And I also love the fact that you're talking to my brother and sister mayors across the country, because let me tell you, we don't build relationships just in a crisis. We make sure that we build these relationships pre-crisis, and we lean on one another as we move through. I've talked to many of them going through COVID. So I appreciate what you're doing, KJLH. I really do.
That's all Stevie Wonder, but thank you, Mayor. Mayor Cantrell, if you don't mind, I'd like to take a couple of phone calls from our listeners. You know L.A. well, since you've spent plenty of time here. Does that work for you?
Oh, sure.
Okay, let's go to Ray from Los Angeles. Good morning. You are on with the Mayor of New Orleans, Toya Cantrell.
Good morning, Mayor, and good morning, Dominique DiPrima.
Good morning. I can't hear you.
Okay, well, I'll recap what he said in his question. Go ahead, Ray.
Oh, okay. I have a comment and question. My question would be to you as the mayor of New Orleans and to mayors here in California. How are we going to combat right now what's going on? This is a perfect time to put pressure on the financial institutions such as the banks, because that's what one of the main vocals I feel that's holding us back. As far as when you go for a loan, they make it like 20 times hard as a Caucasian to get a loan.
Absolutely. I mean, you're talking about systemic racism, and finance is one of the main places it shows up. Absolutely. Thank you, Ray. So what you're asking is, how can we leverage this moment, this momentum, to make sure financial institutions change their ways, not just police departments? Any thoughts on that, Mayor Cantrell?
Oh, no. First of all, Ray, I really appreciate your focus in going deep in this, because it is deeper than police departments. It's in our institutions, and one of our largest is the banking community. And for minorities of color, it has caused us to really reach out to the CDFI community, who seems to have a more thorough lens of working with communities of color, like Hope Community Credit Union, and through Goldman Sachs. Through this pandemic, we were able to provide over $50 million in opportunity loans for our small businesses, CDFI funds that will be forgiven. And it's because of these institutions that are more intentional and who can really teach the larger banking community about how it's done, and not have the fear and also the expectation that if they lend money to small business owners, that they will not get paid back. And that's a myth. It's not a fact at all. Most oftentimes, the micro lending opportunities that are granted are paid back on time and in full. But it's these institutions that need to partner with communities, and they also have policies that requires them to do so, but we need to hold them accountable in doing so. So what leaders can do and what mayors can do can truly build these partnerships with the CDFI community to demonstrate that not only are the resources able to hit the ground where the needs are the greatest, but also demonstrate how the businesses how they utilize those dollars, how they have a direct impact on the communities that they live in, how they hire people that most folks will not hire. So it is a ripple effect throughout the community. That's what we're working and doing here in the city of New Orleans, and also being intentional about our gig economy, our service industry, because we know that a large portion of our people are employed in these areas, but mostly as relates to our small business community that do not make up the majority of the receipts that others gain. So it's with real intentionality that we have to have on the ground, linking our people to these real opportunities. Some banks are doing it, but the CDFI community, I believe that we can turn to them to truly demonstrate how it's done effectively.
It's a great point about, black workers. A lot of us in the gig economy or in, freelance type of situations or in those, one-person businesses, right? The sole proprietorships. And I think about COVID. I think about health benefits. How do we... Because those folks, at least we've seen a temporary adjustment on unemployment, but health benefits and protecting those folks seems like a big challenge. And it seems like part of the reason we're going to have to insist that we get federal assistance for the cities.
Absolutely. Dominique, you are right on. And as of now, the CARES Act money does not fill the gap of lost revenue. And for a city like New Orleans that thrives off of our hospitality and tourism industry, there is a significant gap due to those losses and an upward of $150 million that's tied to those losses. So we are definitely in a place to where the federal government should really look differently upon cities that have been disproportionately impacted, certainly with helping to fill the gap of the loss of revenue, because it will have an impact on basic city services that you need to provide your residents with, and also being creative with different initiatives to be able to activate in this time of crisis.
All right, let's go to Desiree real quick. Desiree from Los Angeles, if you would give me the short version, I'd appreciate it.
Hi, Dominique, and let me just take a minute to say happy birthday. I hope you're enjoying your birthday weekend, your birthday month. And thank you, Mayor Cantrell. Is it?
Cantrell, yes.
Cantrell. Listen, my thing is that there are so many covert activities going on that are not getting attention, and they are just as deadly. And I'm moving to try to get people out to speak about what's going on to inmates being held and not released under COVID for very minor things, and it's causing them to lose their property. And, the whole thing is that they're being set up under false calls to the police officers, similar to what happened in New York.
Okay, Desiree, we don't have too much time, and I think your question about, prisoners, incarcerated people under COVID is especially resonant for, anyone in Louisiana, right, Mayor Cantrell?
Well, in regards to our Orleans Parish, our Justice Center, our jail, the sheriff has actually been doing a very good job of minimizing the spread of COVID-19 within our jail. We've also done with the city-owned juvenile center, our juvenile justice intervention center with our young people. We've also been very happy with our ability to prevent spread within our system there. So one, it's been our access to testing. You have to test. Like, I cannot overstate it enough. That's how this city was able to move from being a hot spot epicenter in this state and in this country to now having flattened that curve at a level of 96%. But it's been because of the aggressive testing. That's how you move away from community spread and really getting a handle on the cases you have so that you can effectively isolate and quarantine. So it's all about testing, isolation, and quarantine so that you can get a handle on it and therefore prevent a community spread. We've done a good job here, I have to say, in the city of New Orleans, and the state of Louisiana is no longer the incarceration capital of the world. However, we have a long ways to go, but progress is being made because it's been folks who are protesting on the ground that have also been demonstrating and acting, bringing forth action when the cameras are not on and when we're not in pandemic. So there are people who are working tirelessly every single day outside of a tragedy because they understand the tragedies that we have to live through every single day in this country.
Mayor Toya Cantrell, thank you so much for being. Thank you so much for being with us. Congratulations. I'm heartened to hear that you've been able to have success in the battle against COVID-19, and so appreciate your stopping by this morning.
Thank you for having me. Thanks, Stevie Wonder. The city of New Orleans loves him, and of course, the Francis family in our city with Dr. Norman C. Francis of Xavier loves him so much. So thank you.
Excellent. We'll be speaking with Inglewood's own James Butts Jr., our mayor, next. Radio Free 102.3 KJLH.